Started?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, cool. Yeah, well, let's get started. Lots of people. This is great. Yeah. Sorry?
Can you turn on that microphone?
Does this turn on?
It does. Right button at the base of it.
How about now?
Yes.
Better? Yeah?
Oh, that's good.
Ooh. Cool. Wow. Nice. Okay. Cool. Did you go start?
Yeah.
That'll work.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's good.
Awesome. So yeah, thanks to coming for bringing functional programming to work through grassroots education. Just going to take a quick poll of the room first. Who here is currently using a functional language or library at work? The majority of the time. It's actually pretty good. Yes. Cool. That's actually more than I was expecting for this talk. So that's amazing to see. Who's currently happy with their tech stack? All right. And obviously, if you're here, who wants to change it? Oh, fantastic. Cool. So that's great. So you're definitely in the right talk. We'll, throughout the talk, if you have a, burning question, please, put up a hand to ask. But we'll also be taking questions at the end as well. So some quick introductions. Who are we? We're going to introduce each other. So over here we have, actually before I do that, we're the founders of the Vancouver Functional Programming Meetup in Vancouver, Canada. This is Xavier Perez. He's originally from France and moved to Vancouver three-ish years ago. And works mostly in Scala these days, and Ruby, and doing large-scale data analytics, SEO. Yeah.
So this is Brooklyn. So like you said, she's the co-founder of VanFB with me. So if you're in Vancouver also, come visit us. We'll be happy to chat with you. So she's a full-stack programmer, mainly doing Elixir right now, I think. She also gave a training here at LambdaConf on Elixir in Phoenix. So if you have questions, let's also comment here.
Cool. So the exact content of this talk has changed a little bit. Just to keep it, so we don't repeat things that have been done earlier in the conference. So this you can think of as everything that we had in our original session. And then you can think of this as everything that Chris Allen gave in his talk. Yeah, so we're going to try to do a little bit of that. So what's the mission?
So what this talk is about, and what you're probably trying to do, want to do right now, is essentially driving technical change in your company. So this talk is mostly about FP, right? But it could really be about anything. You may want to bring, a new framework, a new library, new practices, new processes. So this is what we're going to try and find ways how to bring that to your company. So essentially, your job is going to be partly education through, it could be training, study groups, and we're going to talk about all of that, and have propaganda essentially, because you want to sell your ideas, right? You want people, and you probably already do that actually. We don't want to overdo that. We're going to talk about that too. But it's essentially propaganda. We want people to learn about these ideas so they can be your advocates, so they can also help you bring these things. We don't want to be the only person to push these technologies in your company. That's not how it works. You want people to also enjoy these ideas so they can help you bring them to your company. So we're going to talk about different ways you can do that: workshops, reading group, different kind of lessons. I don't know if you want to take over.
Yeah. Cool. Obviously, this talk is aimed at companies that aren't using functional programming or whichever technique you're trying to bring to your company yet. We all know that functional programming is, clean, productive, effective, all that stuff. But that doesn't matter if you can't use it in your day-to-day, right? It's great doing it as a hobbyist, but obviously, it'd be better if you do it for your 9 to 5, right? Cool. So for learning, we're going to be talking about establishing a curriculum, lesson plans, and talking about remembering what it was like for you learning functional programming.
Yes, one thing that you might not realize, and that actually realized only recently, is that we have something of like learning amnesia, right? It's way too easy to be like, oh, monads, functors, profunctors, so easy, and like you should be able to learn that in 5 minutes. But like we have a tendency to forget like the journey to guess like how much work it actually took for us to actually be at that specific level to know a specific material.
The pain.
And the pain that you took. And it's really easy to forget that. So we really want to remember that to like tailor the way you're gonna teach people and help them learn, right? You don't want to say it's too easy, it's easy. You want to remember that, and that's surprisingly difficult, actually.
Yeah, well, and especially once you've become very, very comfortable with something, it almost becomes part of you, right? It's like, obviously this is a hylomorphism, right?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be, right? But you forget about the two weeks of evenings you spent going, I don't understand these types, what's happening, right? Cool. The other thing that we want to stop, to avoid, you've probably seen this around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is extremely funny. I love that, and we probably all love that. But like that's essentially what you want to avoid. Though you don't want to give that vibe. Like it's fine to joke and whatever. But like you want to avoid that vibe of like FP is for smart people, is for geniuses. It's super hard. Only this guy can actually understand. And if you don't, you're just like a baby. You don't want that. So anyone can learn FP. You shouldn't say it's easy, but it's difficult. But you shouldn't say it's impossible and only for geniuses, right? You want to relate to people. So
yeah,
love that, but like let's try to avoid that kind of perception. People already have that perception anyway, so let's try to keep it down.
Yeah, and providing this, creating this perception that is for geniuses, and even through jokes like the ones that we're making right now, it can cause mental blocks in students, thinking like, oh, this isn't something for me. This is really challenging. I'm going to have a hard time with this. It's presented as this is a useful tool. This is going to be, you have somebody here to help you learn this. And in the case of with the teacher, it doesn't set people up to be afraid of it and to provide those mental blocks. Right? And actually, once that's there, you spend most of your time trying to get past that block, even if it's something that they would have understood more quickly or more readily otherwise.
So for learning, we have like different options, right? So the main one that may come to your mind is like the classroom environment. You're going to be a teacher, you're going to have students, you're going to have like a curriculum, and you're going to have regular sessions. That's one way to do it. Another one is just to have like study groups, a regular study group. You're going to meet with people, you're going to go through a book, series of exercises, tutorial, work together through exercises, some kind of thing, or maybe little projects. Maybe have homework or not. We're going to detail all of that just in a minute. And one thing to keep in mind, like in any of these cases, it's all about the exercises. Like whatever you do, you can go through books, you can read blogs, you can do whatever you want. If you don't write code, if you don't do exercises, nothing is going to stick. It's just not going to work. It's exercises and more exercises. This is the only way to learn, effectively at least. So the first thing we can talk about is the classroom environment. The first thing to do is to define all the parameters you want. So essentially, for instance, the size, right? How many people are you going to have in your classroom? You probably don't want too many because it might be a bit overwhelming. So you might need even a TA or whatever. If you have a big company, you want to do like huge session, but we recommend keeping it small, a few people, maybe a dozen. Like it's really up to you. It depends on how comfortable you are with teaching. But the point is that you want to like find all these parameters in advance. So the frequency or the pace is really important too. You don't want to go too fast. Even if you really, really want to teach this thing and you just want to go fast and like do Haskell in production next week, you have to realize that you have to adapt the pace to depending on your audience, right? So don't go too fast, don't go too slow either, because it might just be boring. People might just not attend the class. So find the right pace and make sure it's clear in advance and that everyone agrees on what the right pace is. Another thing is you want to agree on homework. So this one is a bit more complicated because it will depend on if you can take time at work to do homework or not. Because some people are like extremely passionate. They will spend all their weekends doing homework, reading books and all that. Some other people have like hobbies, families. They want to do other things than programming. So they don't want to spend their free time doing homework for work. This is not fun. So we want to make that clear on everyone and make sure like everyone is on the same page on homework. I think homework is extremely effective, but if people don't do homework, then that's no point, right? So obviously. And lastly, you want agree on the location. So again, it could be on premise at work, or it could be it's some random cafe or anything. But same thing, you won't have the same location every time. So like you can develop this kind of routine and habit, and you want that to be clear before even starting.
Yeah, we've both done a couple different locations for these. We found most effective, ideally, if you can get space, at your workplace, that's ideal, right? Meeting room, boardroom, right? That's great. As soon as you try to venture outside, the temptation is going to be, hey, let's do this over lunch at a restaurant. And the first session, you'll get through a couple exercises, and then the second session becomes maybe chatting about FP, and then the third session is let's just go for lunch, right? And we're going for our study group is still the excuse, but you're turns into a social group, right? So even if you're going to go to a cafe or wherever, making sure that everybody's totally on board, that this is a productive work session, right? So it's also not doing it every single lunch, giving people a break, so that you can get that buy-in, and it's not just trying to go whole hog immediately into this thing. It's like starting to run, right? Don't try to sprint an entire marathon first. Build up to it, build up these concepts and these ideas. Some people will try to do this thing called the Pomodoro technique. So it's basically using a little timer to time box exercises. I'm really not a fan, especially in a classroom setting. This is equivalent of like a timed code test, ends up feeling like. I don't know if anybody's ever done one of those in an interview, but it's a great way to get freaked out and just do the worst you possibly could in this thing, right? The point when you're being a teacher is to make everybody comfortable and not afraid of the material, right? And introducing things like timed sessions or timed exercises, especially in group work, can be very scary. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't time box. Obviously, you should time box these things, but if you hit the end of that, it's totally okay. We'll pick up next time, right? It's not that we're going to finish this and then we're going to go through a solution. Cool. Difficulties.
One thing that I never realized before trying to teach people is that it's extremely difficult to know if people really understand something or not. You'll be like in your classroom, you'll say everyone is good with this. People are like, yeah, sure, no problem. You're like, okay, cool, we're going fast. And then next week, you're going to learn something that requires some of that previous knowledge, but everyone understands. We'll be like, nope, I don't understand that thing from last week. We'll be like, wait, what? What's happening? So like, it is actually a huge problem. So you want to make sure you want to go out of your way to make sure everyone really understands. Even if you have to take it slower, you make sure people do the exercises, really understand. You don't want to leave people behind, essentially, because they will just drop out really quickly, or they won't be interested, or even maybe feel like they're not smart enough or anything. So you want to avoid that as much as you can. So make sure you get feedback regularly, that you know what people are doing, if they really understand the thing. That's crucial. And that's way more difficult than I could have anticipated, really. One of the things that sometimes it's okay, and you have to be okay with like people understanding only some parts of what you're trying to teach. Sometimes it's okay to like brush over something. I know we want to learn all the details, all the things, but sometimes it's useful to just like understand some part of the thing and then cover it later, just so you can move on. So you have to be very like careful about that, because you don't want just like hand wave too much, because then something might just be not clear. But like sometimes we be saying, oh, this is magic for now, but like next week we're going to go over this, but for now we focus on the little part. So you have to be okay with that too.
And especially for the sort of people that come to LambdaConf, people like me, I love theory, right? And so it's hey, let's introduce anonymous functions, and this is essentially a lambda calculus, and hey, look, we can church encode integers now, right? Numbers. Don't do that, okay?
Not at first, at least.
Not at first, yeah. So, yeah. Lessons, I tell you.
Here you go.
If you're working from a book, which is, we have some recommendations at the end. If you're working from a book, reading chapters and not doing exercises is not very helpful, right? It gives you a very high-level conceptual understanding. But again, you're going to hear us say this repeatedly, it's about the exercises, always the exercises. Even if you skip portions of the text in the book, doing the exercises, if you think if the students think that they understand it, have them prove it, right? Once you get into the detail, I think we've all had this experience, like you read something like, oh yeah, sure, totally. And then you get in there like, oh wait, how does this actually work? And providing people with exercises that are different from the ones in the book, that test their knowledge of multiple things as they're progressing through, is very helpful to make sure that people are actually up to the place in the book that you think they are.
Yeah, so the alternative to that is, well, the study group. There might be different reasons why you might want to do a study group, but one thing to remember, again, is that this is not a classroom, and you are not the teacher. What may happen sometimes, it actually happened to me with a few people in that room, actually, is that you start a study group, it's like, okay, we have that book, it's cool, we're gonna like chat about different chapters once a week, it's gonna be interesting. Yeah, after a session, you realize you're standing in front of a whiteboard explaining what's in the book, and you're essentially becoming the teacher, and they're becoming the students. And there's nothing wrong with the classroom environment, again. But then suddenly that shifted in something that you weren't expecting, and you're not prepared for it. You might just wing it, it might be great, but chances are it's not going to be as good as it could have been if you had started as a classroom. So remember that, don't let that slip away in like that slightly different thing, and you ended up being the teacher. So again, this is very important. Like a classroom, it should be time boxed. So like you may feel like a study group is a bit more informal. It's like going to a cafe, just chatting about Haskell or some random FP topic. But like time box it, right? Not everyone wants to spend 5 hours every day chatting about FP. I know I could do that. I would do that. I would be very happy. But not everyone wants to do that. You want people to like be scared away. So like time box it. Make sure someone handles like setting up the calendar invites. You can be the leader of the group in terms of like handling the organization. You're still not a teacher. Like make sure it's every week at the same time or every 2 weeks or anything that you set the agenda, that it's very clear. So you want it very formal, but you don't want it to become a classroom.
Very important in this style is that it's run by peers, right? So it's not that, like what happened to Xavier, it's not that you have way more experience in something and you're trying to bring somebody, bring everybody else in with you. Use a classroom, right? This is, we're all going to learn this together. I don't have the answers. I really want to read this book. Who else wants to read this book with me? I think this might be really useful, right? And then, still, all about the exercises, but even more so now, right? Analyze each other's work. Okay? I have started out in music theory and composition, and this is what you do, right? You see somebody's work, and then you break it down into little pieces, and you analyze it as a group in a non-judgmental way, because everybody's learning, and that's okay, and you see what's good about it, what's bad about it, what could be improved. And this is probably the best way to improve in style, in quality, the fastest, even if it's keeping you on chapter 1 of the book, right? You'll have a very, very deep understanding. If you have a lot of people that are interested, break it out into smaller groups, right? I'd say anything above, say about 4, can get to be a bit much. And breaking it down into, not everybody has to be going at the same speed, right? So if some people really want to take more time and dig into the material, and other people want to go a little bit faster, break it into those groups. If you have a study group of 12 people, it can get very uneven very quickly. And then you end up with the people on the later chapters teaching people on the earlier chapters with a partial understanding. Not always ideal. But you have to emphasize that it's a shared learning experience, right? It's not a teacher in a classroom, even if you were the one who suggested the idea in the first place. Homework. We all have homework, right?
No.
Mm-mm. So you have to get buy-in first on this one. It's really nice. You can be much more efficient in your sessions, giving people stuff to do at home. But it's not even possible for everyone. People have kids, for example, or they have a life outside of functional programming, unlike us. Who does that, right? Yeah. But it does save you time. It's more efficient for you, the person leading the group. That's great. And people are really motivated and are going to actually do the homework. This is fantastic. But as soon as people stop doing the homework at home or on their commute or whatever, take it into the session immediately, right? Otherwise, people are just going to feel bad that they didn't do the homework and they're going to drop out. Same with in the study group doing solutions. People are coming in with solutions to homework, chapter exercises. Go through those in person, work through them, dissect them, see how, use that time to dig into the material.
So then you've started learning, that tech, that FP, that thing at work. And the next step is to try to put it, at work, actually do something in production. So the next step is adoption. The first thing you have to remember is that this is not personal. This is not about you liking FP. I mean, it is partly what this is about, but this is not really what this is about. This is about the company as a whole or your organization. This is about, for instance, making programmers happier. For instance, could be about, having fewer bugs, having more performant code. Like anything works, but like it's you have to have good reasons to bring FP at work. So that has like some difficulties around bringing, FP at work once people start learning it. Probably the biggest one is actually management. Good luck with that. So I'm sure probably a lot of people have like some trouble with that. So the first thing is you have to learn to speak the language. We're developers. Maybe some of us are actually managers. I don't know, but like we're developers who speak developer language. We have developer problems. Management, they're managers. They have their own language, right? So when you're like saying, oh, we're gonna add this technology to our stack and something, and they have to decide on that. Now they have developers problem, which it's not their problem. They're not like. They don't understand that language. I mean, they may, right? But like that's just an idea, right? So try to speak their language. Make it sound like it's gonna actually don't make it sound. Show what it's gonna bring to the companies. For instance, it could make you write fewer bugs, which in turn are gonna make like us gain more money. So essentially, talk about money, right? Or write code faster, right? Which again translates into what money, right? So again, speak their language. There's nothing wrong with that, but don't just go to them negatively, say, oh, our code base is terrible, we just need to rewrite in that, this is going to be better. That's not how you want to approach the problem. It's like, you want it the other way around. You want to say, oh, there's like this tool that would actually allow us to, increase our productivity by 20% or something, anything. Like you want to tailor your arguments to your managers.
Yeah. When talking to them about the return on their investment, because it's a risk for them, right? We have something that works right now. We're working in Rails, let's say, right? And that's working, and that's been making us money. Why would we want to switch to something else? Money and reputation, right? Reputation includes big bugs in production. Nobody likes that. Having a type-safe language, for example, right? You can catch a lot of those much earlier. Or having a hard time attracting developer talent, using one of these, cooler languages that people get excited about, or frameworks, or whatever, libraries, can be a good way to bring people in and be a differentiating factor. These are all ways to show to a business-minded person that this is a good idea. Even if they say no, take a positive spin. You don't want to leave a bad taste in their mouth about having this conversation, because you're probably going to be having this conversation again in 6 months, right? So maybe it's no, we don't have developers that can write this right now. We've been running this study group. How far are they? Well, we're about halfway through the book. Well, let's have this conversation again when we're done. And maybe we've built a small thing, which we'll talk about in a bit. And never let this be like, oh, they won't let me use the thing that I want to use, right? It's like, okay, cool, I understand. This is probably not a good fit right now. But, we can revisit later, right? And at the end of the day, it's their company, right? They're the ones who are going to succeed or fail based on our work. And it's very cool that we get to have that impact, but it's also, with great power comes great responsibility.
So yeah, once you've convinced management, or it could be first management, second the team, you have to convince your team, right? So because not everyone might be on board. We've brushed on that earlier. Like developers have a tendency to think about their identity as a developer. Like you've probably heard people say, "Oh, I'm a Ruby developer," or "I'm a something developer." And now you're coming to them, you're telling them, "Hey, we're going to move to Scala." So everything you've learned before, and that's what they're going to hear. It's not true, but they're going to hear, "Oh, everything we've learned before is now wrong or useless." That's not the case, but that's what they're going to hear because they've assumed this is now their identity. So you want to make sure they understand that there's nothing wrong with that. They're not a Ruby developer, they're not a Java developer, they're a dev, and they're going to learn with you. And with these new techniques, they're going to actually become, hopefully, better devs and write better code, hopefully. So you want to have that discussion with your entire team, or at least whoever is concerned. So as a group or individually, whatever works, probably want to do both actually, but you want to make sure everyone is on the same page. And we actually had a little story a little later where that didn't go so well. Secondly, you need to know when to compromise. So for instance, you're trying to go from Ruby to Haskell because you want to have all these cool FP concepts, but maybe this is a bit too far. So maybe we can go in between. Maybe just moving to Scala is going to be one work for a team. Maybe that's, and you should accept that maybe that's good enough. Like you can't always get what you want. So that might be just be the right in between. Or for instance, like it could be like, okay, so this is actually going too far. We don't want to change languages. This is too much right now. So maybe we can just introduce FP techniques in our current language. So if you're doing Node.js, for instance, you can add whatever the libraries are called, like Lodash or something like that, and do some more FP-oriented type of dev. And maybe that's also going to be like a Trojan horse for like, just introducing these languages later. So this is not useless. So this is just going to keep on going, right? This is the first step, essentially.
Yeah, well, and with that, it's about building familiarity with the concepts, right? It's great if we get to use the language of our choice, but at the end of the day, this is about the concepts and the techniques, and you can do these techniques in really any language. It's just which one's going to make it easier to do this, right? So yeah, getting your team on board at all, and that's even for on board for doing grassroots training, is very important. If there's no interest, you're just dragging people kicking and screaming, right? If you even have one person, you can use this as a wedge to get more people interested. It's like, oh, Brooke and her crazy Haskell stuff, that's whatever. But then I get one other person to come with me, and now there's two of us. And then later there's three of us, right? Yes. You also have to realize that they're giving up their time for your covert crusade, right? You want to use FP. You're going to be creating some functional programmers, creating interest in this thing. You're giving them guidance, even if it's as simple as, hey, I'm curious about this book, and this is a good resource. I've heard good things about it. I've done some research, or I already know this, and let's have a little class session. You owe them your guidance. But that's because they're taking an interest, trusting you. They're doing all of this homework and extra work and changing their mindset about their career and the way that they do their day-to-day, right? And building bridges can be a great way to do this, right? So, for example, I use Elixir at work and Phoenix, and there's this parallel. It's like, well, Phoenix, or you hear it a lot, Phoenix is kind of like Rails. Well, I mean, it's not at all, but they kind of look similar, and they come from a similar community and similar background and similar values. So people can say like, oh, okay, well, this kind of, if I look at it the right way, kind of looks similar. It's not totally foreign, right? So maybe some of the stuff that I'm going to have from before is going to still be useful now, right? Making parallels with, most people are working in object-oriented languages, unless they're in FP, right? So saying, oh, that singleton pattern, we have those too. Or solid principles are a great one. Let's go through the solid principles and check off how functional programming hits all of these. It's doing solid principles by design, right?
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, as cool as this is, you don't want to be that guy. Yeah, they're pretty cool, but no, don't be that guy. Don't be one of these. This is gonna scare people away. Just don't do this. Like, there's a difference between being passionate and being a zealot, right? There's a huge difference. Like, it's okay to be, to like be, for instance, a Haskell advocate and have good reason for it, and like try to, show to other people why it's good. There's a difference to just blindly believing it's the right way to do things, and you should just listen to me and forget, and everything else you're doing is wrong. So like, this is something we're going to hear a lot, actually, I guess, in that conference. That's something I probably all do to some extent, but like, try not to be that guy. This is like really important. You want to, again, like approach it like showing the advantages, showing the benefits, not just it's the right way to do it because I said so and I'm smarter than you. Don't do that ever. Obviously, yeah, well, that's pretty obvious. Hopefully, you don't do that. But literally. So a little story. That might be a bit of a strong word, but so a few years ago, I was at a little startup. We were mostly doing Ruby on Rails, like small shop, 3 or 4 people, and I had like that book, The Joy of Clojure, on my desk because I was learning Clojure at the time. And the other dev was like, "Oh, this is really cool. I'm going to learn Clojure too." So we learned Clojure too. We're like, "Oh, maybe we should, maybe we should build something with it." So we're like, "Okay." let's build a little something that is not, really critical or whatever. So we built a small dashboard, like a real-time dashboard, like some data showing up, and we put that like near the entrance on our office. And like the CEO loved it. It was great. That was a cool experiment with like a closure and closure script at the time. It was kind of like relatively bleeding edge. That was a few years ago. So that was great. And then a few weeks later, we're like, oh, we have a new side project. Maybe you could try using closure. That would just work. So we're like, okay, let's do it. Kind of work, no real issue. And so we started getting pretty confident in our abilities, at least with that other dev, in our abilities to build production code with Clojure. Amazing. A few months later, the next big project comes in. It's like our big next huge thing. It's going to be that dev and another one working on that. So we're like, you know what? We should just do it in Clojure. Why not? So we start building the thing, build it, spend, I don't know, a few weeks or months, something. We're like almost halfway through the project. It was actually relatively difficult to convince our management to go through all the things I was talking about earlier, but it worked. They were like, okay, let's go, let's do this. So we do it. A few weeks later, that meeting with like the CEO, some investors, and other devs, and we chat about how it's going. And they're like, oh, so how's that new programming language you switched to? Is it great? So the other dev's like, yeah, it's amazing, really productive. I'm like, great. Me said the same thing. Comes the third dev that is like kind of like looking, looks at them and like, it roughly said something with the line, no, this was actually a terrible idea. We're actually way less productive. This is a huge step backwards. As you can imagine, it wasn't my proudest and greatest moment. We're like, wait, what is happening here? We never heard about that. And you drop that in front of the CEO and investors. This is a disaster. So we go in full damage control mode. We ended up actually dropping entirely Clojure. We write the whole thing in Rails, in Ruby. We were obviously really not happy. We're a super small company, we're time crunched, didn't have much money, so we couldn't afford to lose that other dev, and by just saying, we don't care, just do Clojure. So that was not a great experience. So why am I telling you that story? What's the moral of the story is that, well, obviously avoid that situation. And it's way too easy to think like this and say, oh, that guy was just a backstabber, he should have told us. But no, that we were the problem. I realized that we just never actually talked to him. We never actually made sure he was on board with that. We never, went to him and say, okay, so how's your Clojure learning? Do you actually enjoy it? Do you think it's working? We actually never done that. We're just so focused on us being like, oh, this is so much better, this is great. Everyone would love that we completely forgot to make sure everyone actually agreed with us. And this ended up being a disaster, essentially. What should have been a huge success ended up being a disaster just because we didn't communicate with the entire team. So try to avoid that situation. Again, communicate, make sure everyone is on board. And sometimes not everyone will be on board, even you're trying your hardest and people just don't want to do it. They might have good reasons. So again, compromise. Maybe you should have done the backend in Rails and maybe kept Clojure script on the front end. Maybe that would have been a good compromise. Who knows? Or maybe you were wrong. Who knows? Be a skeptic of your own ideas. Maybe bringing Clojure to that company was actually a bad idea. Just because we're convinced it was a good idea doesn't mean it was. So maybe it was right all along. So really what I'm trying to say is it's communication. Talk with your dev, talk with your management, talk with everyone, make sure everyone's on the same page and understand. That's the story of the day. Yep.
And on that upbeat note, let's talk about your first production project, right? So you've gone through all this, you've trained your team, you've had buy-in from management, and you're going to do the first thing, right? First production FP project. So there are trade-offs, right? This is your first production app in this. It's probably going to go a little slower, right? This is going to act as a bit of a training ground, right? It's professional development. Should probably not be the biggest thing central to your business. A complete rewrite of the core logic functionality of the business, right? I don't emphasize enough. Do not rewrite production projects in your new favorite cool language, library, whatever, right? Unless you're adding something new. If you're getting back to feature parity, it's not worth it yet. Later when you have lots of it in there, right? When you have success. Okay? This is all about risk management. Yes, okay.
So, yeah.
Take this with me? Okay. Yeah. So, we have, obviously, Cartesian plane. So, we have low impact, low risk, high risk. So, how does it feel in low risk, low impact? Kind of meh, right? I wrote I didn't actually, but so you go and you write a little CLI tool that tells you how many Git commits there were in the last week. Okay, that's cool. I could do that before. Very low risk, right? Company's not going to go down, but super low impact. You don't really care, right? On the other side, high risk, high impact. We rewrite the entire app in whatever, Scala, right? Coming out of Python. And, we might introduce a bunch of bugs because that existed for 5 years and been battle tested, and we just did a complete implementation in a weekend. Maybe not the greatest way to sell this to the company. After that, you have the cool zone, right? Low risk, high impact, probably a new project, not totally central to the business, something that's going to add value, like the dashboard that Xavier had, right? Or I've done on a client project, we needed to prototype something, right? I've been working with Phoenix for a while, felt pretty confident that I could do this. We prototyped it in Phoenix, worked great. Next project, you can just use Phoenix on it. Awesome. And then down here, high risk, low impact. That's probably a really horrible idea. Yeah, don't do this. I can't actually even really think of any cases for this, but just be wary. Oh yeah, the big title for this really is, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Right? Yeah. Cool. So we have some resources for you guys. The really big one on here, and a lot of these ideas, and it goes much deeper into things like the different reactions people will have on the team when you're trying to bring this in, is Driving Technical Change. It's a pragmatic programmer's book. Extremely well written, right? Yep. And then here's some books that we've used or suggested to people and have heard good feedback about, both ourselves and through the functional programming meetup. Programming Phoenix is extremely well written, co-authored by the language creator and the guy who wrote the framework. So if you're in a Rails shop and you're looking to introduce a little bit, yes, it's still a dynamically typed language, but there's immediate benefits over Rails. That's a great one you've used.
Yeah, I've used the Red Book, the functional programming Scala book, through the study group that transformed into a classroom. I would say this is probably one of the finest books on FP right now. It's a bit difficult to go through, I would say, because it's relatively short. It introduces a lot of concepts, but to me it's probably one of the best books there is on the market right now on that. So if you're going through that one, go slowly. One word of warning I would go with that is if you just want to learn FP, that whole book is in Scala, but it doesn't really teach you Scala much. So you may want to spend 1 or 2 sessions or more before that, making sure everyone understands the basic syntax, classes and everything, because it's way too easy to assume that, for instance, if they've never done something with interfaces, for instance, they'll be like, oh wait, what's a thread? We're like, oh, it's just an interface. But if they only ever done Ruby in their life, they'll be like, wait, what do you mean? What is an interface? So it's not going to be helpful at all. So maybe spend some time learning the syntax, basic OOP concepts that are actually integral to Scala before moving to that. But then it's actually a pretty amazing book, so I would heavily recommend. And even if it's not in a learning environment, I would recommend reading it anyway, just to brush up on your skills. It's heavily exercise-based, pretty much half the chapters are just exercises, which is, again, a great way to learn. So I would heavily recommend that book,
Yeah. Closure for the Brief and True is the other one that I've used. This book is hilarious. It's great. It's wildly entertaining, I'll say. And it's very easy to get people on board, even after the first chapter with it, if you're looking to do a Lisp. Obviously, the other one is the classic, The Little Schemer. People enjoy that too, because that's kind of more about a conversational style. And it doesn't go super deep, right? Just to kind of give people a taste, is this something you actually want to do? The other two that we have on here, so the top right, the Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs is a classic. Everyone should read this book. It's pretty hardcore, so it depends on the type of person that you're recommending this to. So I've had people come to the meetup and I don't really know much about this yet, but I want to go really super deep. Give them this book, they'll love it. They'll blow through it in 3 weekends. It's great. And then the last one, of course, is Haskell Programming from First Principles, Chris Allen's book. I've heard really great things about people using this to introduce Haskell, or even not just Haskell, using it to introduce other libraries into their companies, because it goes from the principal level, right? Here's what Lambda calculus looks like. This is what a functor is. And people get very, very comfortable with it. It's extremely well written, very well explained. Highly recommend. Not on commission. So yeah, that's our talk. This is our contact info, which we'll leave up. But if anybody has questions,
Or if you have like stories to share, maybe like
Yes.
battle stories, we'd be really happy. To
yeah,
hear
or
about them
if you
and,
want to hear
like,
more war stories, we have them.
Yeah, we have plenty. Please.
Yeah.
Do either of you have any experience or know of good stories about doing this in a distributed team context, which is very different because there's no classroom, there's no sitting around the table together?
I guess you do.
I do, yeah. I work for my company is about 40% remote. I am a digital nomad, so I'm all over the place. So we've done a couple things. Lunch and Learns, super helpful, just on Hangouts or now Zoom, I guess is the new hotness. Showing people, I didn't do this one, but somebody rewrote like a minimal Slack client using Phoenix, for example, which is pretty cool. We have one guy right now preparing an Elm talk to show everybody, because we do a lot of front end in my company. So there's that, and then doing anything that you can, like other than saying, hey, read this book, doing anything that you can in a, like these small team projects, right? So saying, when we did that prototype Phoenix project that I alluded to earlier, that was, I was in Japan and the other developer was in Belgium, right? And we had both kind of looked at Elixir before, right? But this was our first, in production use of it, and it worked really well. As long as you have that that communication and you can help each other and ask questions. We were constantly in a direct message in Slack, just being like, how does this work? And figuring it out. Anyone?
Cool.
All right. Well, great. Thank you.
Thank you.